the call came in and said, hold the line for the president. And for a second, I couldn't, you know, I was still thinking Kennedy, and I was kind of taken back for a minute, and then in a few seconds, it was just a matter of a second, he came on in a loud voice. He said, "This is Lyndon Johnson. Connect me to the accused assassins, doctor." It sounded the same as it had been on newscasts when I would hear him speak. I knew I had put a call to the operating room, so I contacted Dr. Crenshaw, and I told him, that I knew he did get the call, and that I was sorry that the people had, in the newspaper and on the TVs, had tried to discredit him. And that was when I spoke out.
From the moment he became president, Johnson had authority over every aspect of the cover-up of Kennedy's murder. He was unassailable.
Johnson has the power to contain the investigation, both nationally and locally, on the ground in Texas. More so than if it had happened, let's say, in Oregon or Wisconsin. Texas. He's got the power to give the CIA what it wants as president, as opposed to Kennedy, who they feared. He's got the power to take the National Security Action Memorandum that Kennedy had signed in November of 1963, tear it up, reverse it, and create a war where 3 million soldiers wound up going to Vietnam instead of 16,000 being brought home by JFK. He can make J. Edgar Hoover director of the FBI for life. He's the man in the middle. The only person that can answer all of the questions of who's at risk, who's going to gain the most, who wins in this deal, there's only one answer to that question, and that's Lyndon Johnson. And his ticket out was Elm Street.
One of the most compelling pieces of evidence linking Johnson with the assassination is through his henchman Malcolm Wallace, the convicted killer of Douglas Kinzer. In the hours following the assassination, on the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository building by the southeast corner window, the Dallas police discovered an unidentified fingerprint.
The fingerprint is the ultimate part of the Mac Wallace story. The FBI fingerprinted every Texas School Book Depository employee, including the women employees that worked downstairs, never handled the boxes. They fingerprinted every Dallas officer that was in the sniper's nest so that they could remove those fingerprints from consideration. At the end of the day, you have one fingerprint remaining. It sits in the National Archives for 35 years, until 1998. An investigator takes it to a highly qualified, certified latent print examiner, a CLPE, along with a redacted fingerprint card from Mac Wallace from the 1951 murder of John Douglas Kinzer. And he said, here's a print card. Do you see anything?
Nathan Darby is one of the most experienced fingerprint experts in the United States, with 35 years service in the U.S. military and the City of Austin Police Department.
I didn't know where it came from, and a week or 10 days later, I called the party and that had brought it over and said, well, it's a match. The finger that made the ink print also made the latent, and we called that a match or identified. And there was no question about it. They matched.
3 years later, Nathan Darby readdressed the same evidence and reconfirmed his original findings.
When he was done, he had a 34-point match. And when you mention that in criminal circles to an investigator, how confident would you feel with a 34-point match? Oh, that's a slam dunk. It can't miss. It doesn't get any better than that. You give me a 34-point match on any case in the United States, I'll take it to court and win.
The inked and the latent print are made by the same finger. And the other evidence that I've been presented with was Malcolm Wallace's left little finger, without a reasonable doubt.
Now, the fingerprint in question came from a cardboard box in the sniper's nest in the Texas School Book Depository. Fingerprints do not last long on cardboard. So it's fair to say that either Malcolm Wallace was wandering around there for no purpose. He was in that sniper's nest on November 22nd. That evidence, that fingerprint evidence, along with Malcolm Wallace's sordid resume, was sent to every imaginable agency or individual that could have an interest in what happened to John Kennedy. The only people that took notice of it were the Dallas police, because it's still an open homicide on their blotter. And they took serious notice of it. And then they were told, forward it up the line, because Dallas no longer has any evidence. It's all in federal hands, even though it's an unsolved homicide. They forwarded it up the line. And it took 18 months for the FBI to say verbally, no, it's not a match. And the single most important fingerprint found in the last 35 years was buried.
I don't know why they couldn't say that the thing didn't match. It did match. There's no question about it. My experience, I've just had too much experience. I know what I'm talking about. I'm positive. There's no question about it. My dying declaration, if I was to drop dead right now, they match.
It's still the big lie. It's unknown. It's unidentified. No, it's identified. It's Malcolm Wallace, and he's linked to Estes, Carter, and Lyndon B. Johnson directly.
According to the official record, Malcolm Wallace died in a single car accident on this lonely stretch of Texas highway on the night of January 7th, 1971. There were no witnesses. His body was taken to a local hospital where he was pronounced dead. He was buried here close to other family members. 8 months later, another key member of LBJ's inner circle, presidential aide Cliff Carter, died unexpectedly. But shortly before his death, he met with Billy Solestes.
They discuss all these murders that Cliff Carter is knowledgeable about. Now, Billy knows about some of them, but Cliff knows about more, and he fills him in on all the details. Malcolm Wallace being a central figure in most of these murders. And there are over 17 murders that Carter tells Estes about. And he actually tells Estes that he fears for his own life. And within 2 days' time, he's dead.
Johnson's attorney, Edward Clark, was one person who prospered. But when LBJ was brought low by the Vietnam War and decided not to run for a second term, Clark felt shortchanged for his role in the assassination, according to his legal partner, Barr McClellan.
He expected $8 million spread over 8 years, over the 2 terms Johnson was to serve. When those terms were cut short by Johnson's sudden and unexpected resignation, Clark was $4 million short. He was not a man to be denied. When he had done a service, he was going to be paid. Planning ahead, he went to Big Oil and Big D, went to Clint Murchison to say, look, I've done y'all a great service. I deserve more. I'm going to get it. Murchison agreed with him and suggested he file for a well in the middle of the great East Texas oil field. He called me in as his personal attorney to make the first bid for getting that money, and he was not successful in getting $4 million, but he got his $2 million. So when all was said and done, Clark realized $6 million for the assassination of John Kennedy.
Barr McClellan believes documentary proof of these dark deeds lies in the Johnson-Clark legal records. For many years, they were kept in a high-security area above the Clark offices, known as the penthouse.
Any of us attorneys could get into the general area, but the secret area, the Johnson area, was locked off, accessible to no one. I have a strong belief that there are substantial records somewhere that show this conspiracy and its both evolution, its execution, and its cover-up. But I don't know where they'd be. We need to see them.
Johnson was ultimately consumed by the high office he had so unscrupulously striven for. A broken man, he retreated to his Texas ranch, where his lawyers were to secretly summon a psychiatrist to deal with his deepening depression.
Speak. I knew I had put a call to the operating room, so I contacted Dr. Crenshaw and I told him, that I knew he did get the call and that I was sorry that the people had, in the newspaper and on the TVs, had tried to discredit him. And that was when he said, "This is Lyndon Johnson, connect me to the accused assassins, doctor." It sounded the same as it had been on newscasts when I would hear it. I was kind of taken back for a minute, and then in a few seconds, it was just a matter of a second, he came on in a loud voice. The call came in and said, "Hold the line for the president." And for a second, I couldn't, I was still thinking Kennedy, and